Well, hello, and thank you for joining the Bramasol webcast series. We're so excited to be presenting these topics to you in small, digestible bites. Today, we're going to focus on disclosures and reporting 2.0. And what we'll be talking about is a number of different topics around that space. But let me just remind everybody how you can contact us. Come on over to bramasol.com to check out our other webcasts, Facebook, LinkedIn, or check out our YouTube channel. We have a whole bunch of different videos up there, including webcasts and webinars, and I think you get a lot of great information out of that. Our panelists today are Julio de la Costa, who's the Director of Technical Accounting and Advisory Services, Vivek Thomas, Product Owner for Disclosures and Reporting, and myself, I am the SVP of Strategy and Marketing. So before we dive into this, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite people, Stephen Covey. And of course, he knows and talks about the 7 basic habits of highly effective people. And one of them is beginning with the end in mind. So whenever we talk to our customers about disclosures, we ask them, number one, think about why you're doing this rev rec or leasing project. What's the goal and objective? And part of that is to do disclosures and reporting. Now, it's not just about disclosures per se, it's keeping those disclosures in alignment with ASC 606 and ASC 842 or IFRS 15 and 16. And so being mindful of that and understanding that you're trying to align to those is very important. But it's just as important to understand your operational reporting. You want to know, where are my leases? How many leases do I have? What's my lease versus owned balance? Where are they throughout the world? And understand which ones are going to where. In addition, of course, you want to understand your revenue accounting and costs. And you want to understand costs and profitability. And so as you look at some of the work that we're doing, we'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, we'll be showing that later this month in a detailed webinar. But at the end of the day, I love this phrase, what gets measured gets managed, because it's not just about reporting for reporting's sake. It's about measuring what you're doing and then managing that and taking an active role. And we'll talk at some point again about comply, optimize, and transform. But today we're really here to focus with my friends Vivek and Julio about what Bramasol has done to bring disclosures and disclosure reporting to a new level. So Julio, good afternoon, good morning.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hey, Vivek, how are you today?
Hey, John, good afternoon.
So guys, why don't you guys have been working real hard on bringing us up to what we like to call the Disclosures 2.0. Maybe you can highlight one or two of these that you think are really interesting and important for our customers.
Yes, John. So, we always, like, as you said, we start with the end in mind. And the reason why we do that is because when companies do their disclosures to the 10K, 10Q, or what have you, financial statements, that is really the last step in the process. The process begins a long time back when you start doing the system, the transactions. And some of these issues actually highlight that. So we looked at some of the issues that the SEC has been asking some of these filers about the questions when it comes to revenue recognition. Some of the more pertinent ones are, they ask about contract assets versus remaining performance obligations. Now we know that this is a key disclosure as far as public companies go, as well as private companies, because it requires that you have to disclose, what are my contract assets, what are my contract liabilities, and how does that vary or differ from my remaining performance obligations. Another big point of view from the SEC's perspective is they have seen a lot of inconsistencies between the qualitative and quantitative data. So what does this mean? This means that companies, they're probably good at explaining some of their applications of their accounting policies, but when it comes to their quantitative data, they have a hard time explaining where is it coming from. And we see it all the time when you look at what system are they using to actually come up with their disclosures. Lastly, one of the big asks from the new standard is the disaggregation of revenue. And there's a requirement that at a minimum, companies have to disclose disaggregation of revenue either point in time or over time or product or service. What does that mean? That means that the SEC's perspective, they are not seeing companies adequately disclose that. So there's a lot of still bubbling issues going on. And, last couple of quarters, the SEC has heightened its activity when it comes to requesting additional information from these public companies. So, John, that kind of takes us into the next level, right?
Right. Yeah, and I love what you guys have done, and maybe you can talk. The two of you can take us through kind of. I see this as we've got three basic things here. We've talked about some new reports we've added. You've done some terrific things to help with the performance, and then you've layered in this analytics and dashboards. Maybe Julio, for the
Yep.
purposes of this, you can focus in on a couple of these, and Vivek, you can talk about what we've done.
Yeah, so I'll start and just talk about the first three. So, what we found was when we talked to our customers about revenue recognition, they say, well, our reports were good and they were excellent at a granular level. It had a lot of detail. But what we realized is when companies are filing their Qs and Ks, they want summary level data. Summary level data because as far as their public company information requirements go, it's the consolidated number. So the first three reports, we worked very hard to actually come up with this summarized information to talk about disaggregation of revenue over point in time, over time, geography, as well as product and service. We've also really focused in on the contract balance roll forward. This is a requirement by the FASB. However, what we found was, and the SEC actually validates that, is many companies have not done it due to the complexity of this report. And lastly, the remaining performance obligation. All these three reports are now available in our disclosure set. And I would turn over to Vivek now to talk about a lot of the improvements from an IT perspective and functionality perspective. Vivek?
Yeah. And Vivek, one of the things that occurred to me, we've been talking with a lot of customers and SAP and others. Your team chose to take the hard road on this. A lot of companies do this by subtracting A from B and doing a lot of math, as opposed to you've really gone in and looked at the actual numbers here. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. To be very honest, John, way back when, I think we started this initiative more than 2 years ago. We tried it the hard way first, or the easy way first, sorry. And we really weren't getting the results we wanted. So, which is why Bramasol decided to make these reports from the ground up, looking at the raw numbers, calculating them over again, and presenting them in a digestible format. So, like Julio said, we started off with a very granular reports, and those gave us a good starting point for them for the reports. And now we are up to summary level reports, which are virtually ready to use in your 10Ks and 10Qs, giving really good consolidated numbers. So coming back to about volumes and scalability, when we initially started, it was early days in the in the revenue recognition products life. There wasn't that much knowledge about it. And to be very honest, the projects were also on a smaller scale. So the numbers of contracts and POBs that we had to deal with were much lower. But as larger companies went on to implement RAR, the reporting requirements just increased. We had to report on more items and on a larger data set. And so we started off with a good performance of 30 to 60,000 different POBs. And over the years, we've continuously improved the product, the way we extract the data, the way we calculate the data, the way we take advantage of parallel processing of staging tables, lots of technologies. so that we are now able to confidently give good performance on even 1.5 million POVs and decent performance on up to 9 million POVs. This is on our actual production environment.
Yeah, and that's terrific. And I think you've also, we see here the performance improvements. I mean, even, you've added this scalability, you've added all of these reports, and you've kept them at the detailed level, yet,
Mhm.
you're continuing to see improvements, and we're what, at almost 100 times faster than our first release?
Yes, I mean, I suspect it's actually more than 100 times, though that's a good round number. And
Mhm.
I'd like to point out that we are maintaining these results while increasing the amount of data that's actually being captured, and also while retaining the drill through capabilities that have been in the product right from the
Absolutely.
start.
Absolutely. And then we're layering on top of that
Mhm.
things like analytics and dashboards. And we'll see a little bit more about that later this week when we do our webinar. Folks can check
Mhm.
out the webinar. We're doing one later this week, but you can check that out too. So
Exactly.
let's turn our attention, turn the page, as it were. The other big thing that came up previously was all about leasing and lease accounting. Julio, we see a lot going on out there. We do see some postponement for private companies, but nonetheless, the SEC has been pretty vocal about what they're looking for. Why don't you highlight a couple of those big areas for us?
Yes, so John, so we all know that the FASB has delayed it one more year because of the COVID impact. So companies are still hustling and bustling trying to get this done because they've realized that the data sets are so huge and there's a lot of work to be done. But what we find the SEC has narrowed in on companies' questions is variable payments subject to an index or rate and lease incentives. And this is very important in today's environment because you find there's a lot of modifications going on, as you see in the news every day. Some companies have stopped paying their rent. It's called a rent concession. And basically, you have to walk back some of those lease incentives. You also have to reevaluate some of these leases. So it's very critical. And I think the SEC is just asking for more information. So, just from my perspective, we see it very important that companies make sure and choose the right system to make sure that their leases are implemented correctly. John?
Absolutely, absolutely, and we see a lot of that going on. So, you know, Vivek, you guys have really focused in again on really developing a set of reports that highlights
Mhm.
and focuses on it. So maybe you guys can talk a little bit about things like the 5-year lease commitment tables. I'm really excited by the idea of the simulations, and of course the drill through capability is fantastic, as well as performance.
So, John, what I really like about our new capabilities in the leasing space is, like you said, the drill through. And what I also really like is the analytics and dashboard. What we find is in today's challenging situation with the pandemic and companies changing its leasing structure, leaving leases, entering new ones, modifying their current lease portfolio, is you need real-time data. You need real-time data to see what's going on in your leasing space. And, you know, please tune into our webinar on Thursday because you're going to see these cool analytics and dashboards. And that really is what I steal from John all the time is insight to action. Because when you have this data in front of you in a visual space, it really shows you the ability to make better decisions, and most importantly, in today's world, quicker decisions, because we know that time is not on our side when it comes to changing your lease portfolio, changing the spend. Companies are trying to reduce their spend, and hence they're starting to stop paying their leases. And a CEO can say, stop paying the lease today. But us in the back office, us accountants, we have to figure out how to account for that transaction. So it really gives them these analytics and the insight to action. I'll turn it over to Vivek now and John, where they can talk about more of the functionality of our new reports as well. Gentlemen?
Sure, Julio, thank you. So just like revenue disclosures, the lease accounting disclosures have also been a constantly evolving product. So we started off with a limited set of reports with a limited number of features, and we've kept adding on to it. Again, this is a rapidly evolving product, lease accounting as a whole. And as companies and the accounting standard boards get more clarity on what they want to see, the product has to evolve with it. So we have brought in a lot of new features there. One of the key features there we've added is the incremental borrowing rate that now can be customized, the alternative calculations. Then we have got what if scenarios. That was a really important functionality that we added in. And once we had the base product really, uh, you know, settled in, we then went ahead and now we are working on the next level, which is analytics and dashboards, like Julio just said, that allow you to do all these and more in a much more user friendly and intuitive way.
Yeah, and Vivek, kudos to you and the team again. We've added all of this detail. We've added all of these reports. You also have added, and we continue to add validation reports. So not only do we do the reporting, but we validated it and we have the tools to do that. But you've increased performance. And again, you've increased performance by over 100%, yet added all of this functionality. So great stuff, guys, and it's really exciting.
John, just one more thing I forgot to mention is that we've also done all this while maintaining compatibility across different platforms. That's a very important point as well. We have customers who use these on ECC. We have customers who are there on S4. This applies to both revenue disclosure reports as well as leasing. So
absolutely, yeah.
Regardless of what platform the customers are on, there is a solution for them.
Right, and you make a great point there, Vivek, and we'll end on this point, and then I'll wrap it up. But we're on the SAP ECC platform. We support the S/4HANA platform and all its beauty, but also because you're building a lot of this using the SAP Analytics Cloud. We can still even bring in external data if you wanted to. So it's a tremendously flexible tool and set of reports.
Right. Absolutely. We've actually done that on one of our biggest projects. So
yeah. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Again, for those of you, thank you for joining us. But we remind you, begin with the end in mind. Figure out what you're trying to accomplish. Leverage insight to action. Really think about what are the KPIs, what are the disclosures that you need to do, and begin building the process. Bramasol continues to add new and improved features. You heard about a few of the really cool ones that are out there, but I think that Vivek's team and Julio have focused on adding well over a dozen different features to each of these sets of reports, and they've improved the performance. So not only have we deepened what you can do, we continue to support drill down, drill through, and drill back, but we've improved the performance. And finally, we're bringing in and layering in dashboarding and analytics. So thank you, Julio. Thank you, Vivek. Hopefully, everybody, you found this useful, and we look forward to speaking with you and helping you learn more about what's available.